very excited to show you our battery sizing tool that we've been working on. So first, I'm not going to go through necessarily all of the deal, but I am going to answer a couple questions that I'll need to help influence what I'm seeing later in the proposal. One thing is our rapid consumption, just a way to get a consumption profile created as quickly as possible. I can always fine tune this later if I have very specific data that I want to put in. Of course, the more the merrier, but for now this should do. I can add in my utility bill here, that I have that. And then just for my proposal later, I'm going to go ahead and I'll just choose Good Leap here. This will help automatically create my first proposal as soon as I have everything that I need for it. If I do want to go in again to fine tune my consumption profile, I have this here. One thing I might do that we'll talk about a little bit later is this post-solar tariff in certain markets where it might be appropriate to select a different tariff for after the homeowner goes solar. I'll want to make sure to have that specified here. But for now, I'm all set there. I'm going to go in and add a quick design. Now that I've got my design, go in here. I've got my first proposal created for me, like I mentioned. And then just for this, I'm going to choose a particular Optimus template. Once I go into the proposal, we've got our slide deck here that we have, and we've added our new battery sizing tool to that. So as I'm ready, I can go in. It's going to be running some calculations for me. Obviously, the big meat and potatoes is right here, the battery recommendations themselves, but I do want to talk about somewhat how we get to this. So we do have over here, these are essentially all the knobs and levers that the rep will be pulling with the homeowner based on what exactly the goals of the battery are for that homeowner so that we can help size appropriately. So some of this goes into what we've been essentially referring to as the worst day. If we're going to be looking at the usage the homeowner is really trying to use their battery to handle, which day is that? Starting with the season, am I somewhere that I have heavy AC usage in very hot summers? Do I, instead of winter, when I'm worried about my solar panels producing the least? Depending on that, I can change those inputs, the purpose of the battery, how I'm going to be utilizing it. We've got self-consumption and backup, depending again on my goals. That'll help determine essentially how we're assuming the battery will be used. We've also got the desired backup power. Essentially, we're pulling the hourly usage for, again, that worst day, depending on the other inputs. How much of the usage during that day do I really want my battery to go forth? And I could say something like 100%, let's just do everything. And maybe that is my goal, but maybe that's a little too ambitious and I want to go a little bit more conservative. So I'll go ahead and I'll just say 90% for right now. And then for the battery backup hours, this is essentially, depends on, again, on the purpose, what hours I plan on using my battery for. This could be, again, a whole 24-hour period. We can certainly do that. So once I'm ready, I'll just hit apply. Now it's going to rerun those calculations based on what I've input there. So now I have my recommended batteries here. Up at the top, I have the kilowatt hours that I have for that particular day, again, based on the inputs I have, the backup need, which is based on those percentages and the time that I've put in, and kind of how my works into that. Now, before I go into the options too, we do have this other breakdown chart here that I want to show. So this essentially is another way to think about how the homeowner will be using their battery. This graph, everybody learns a little bit differently, and sometimes having a visual can really help in a sales process. So I want to talk somewhat about the lines you're seeing. For the solar energy generation, this is coming from PV watts. This is the hourly production for, again, that worst day. We've got the energy demand. That's the hourly consumption that we're getting from Genability. And then we've got this blue line here. This is battery storage. You can essentially think of this as if you could dream up an ideal battery that would do exactly what you've told Enerflo, in this case, what you want to do, the goals that you have, the usage that you've dictated, and how you're going to be using your battery. If you could dream up a perfect battery, this is what it would look like. And then I can optionally click to add the different batteries that I have available to me in this market by this installer to see how things shake out. So I can click on as many or as few as I want, but this can help compare to that ideal scenario. I can also change the hours here. This again might look and see, okay, if I was just doing something like a self-consumption modeling, I might instead change it from 5 p.m. onward because that's when my energy demand starts to exceed my solar generation. Depends on how you're using it, but we want this tool to be helpful for all of those different cases. Now, based on these recommendations here, which are going to be sized up, again, depending on the usage I have, including the quantity, it'll have the backup hours that are affiliated, the output, the capacity, and the warranty years for those, and then the costs as well. So I can look at it that way. So depending on, again, the performance that I'm seeing from the batteries here, how they stack up, that might help me eliminate some choices. And then depending on then cost, how I want to look at those. So for me, these Lion batteries are looking like the best option just based on performance and cost. Seems like a really great deal for me. I'm going to go ahead and select these. Now it's summing up what I've selected here in case I come back. I want to see what selections I've made, but maybe I'm just a little unsure if I want to change my mind. I can always go back, run the calculations again, the recommendations, and as I make changes, even if it's just something like the quantity, it is going to keep track of what I've selected. I can select on top of it, but I'm not losing anything by going back and forth. It's going to keep track of what I've already dictated. But I'm feeling pretty good, so I'm just going to go ahead. One thing I do want to also point out as part of our slideshow that can be pretty helpful is based on these selections, I've now added more slides. So we have these slides here from Lion Energy so that when I have that battery selected, I can add more information for my customer to help walk them through what it means to have this Lion Sanctuary system. I won't go into all the details, of course. They could speak to it better than I could, but I do have these now dynamically put into my proposal for my customer so that I can take them through that process and make sure that they're as informed as possible. As I go through, I can go through some of the finance terms, some of the environmental benefits, other custom slides that my organization may have. One thing that's definitely going to be very important, though, of course, is to go over the savings and financial impact. Obviously, that's primary concern, especially in certain states when quoting with batteries and certain lenders as well. We do, as part of our savings calculations, take into account quite a few bits of data. That post-solar tariff that I mentioned earlier, we're considering how much of the utility is being used when I'm charging and discharging from my battery, if I'll be exporting to my utility. All of those things are taken into account when we're running the savings analysis and utilizing that battery's data and some of the specs of the batteries to know how that will fit in as realistically as we can forecast. Thank you very much.